What's going on, everybody? James here from Artofficial Entertainment, and today I'm going to be covering the climb start actions utilizing the transition action system in the dynamic parkour trace system version 3. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so we are here in the project that we've been using so far, and as I had said, we're going to be setting up some additional climb start actions, and we're going to be using the transition system to be able to actually accomplish this. Now, one thing I want to note before we get too deep into this is that the transition system is not just for this purpose. This is just one purpose that you can use it for. Now, realistically, the transition system is also used for landing animations. You can set up your own custom use because it is a little bit more open-ended. I did add something to allow for the climb starts and transitions and jumps. There's a lot of utilization within state types that you can use with the transition system. But outside of that, there's a lot of ways that you can set it up under your own uses as well. So I'm going to show you some pieces about the transition system, and then we're going to refocus back towards the climb use of it. So the first thing is, let's take a look at how we would call to a transition action. And the first way is we can call to it from an animation. So if I go to my climbing animation here, folder, and then we open up this wall run animation. So this is our initial climb start, I guess, that we had set up in the last video. Now, if you click on the reset parkour action notify here at the end, you're going to notice that in the details panel, there's this transition options. Now, if we open up this menu, we have a Boolean value of attempt transition. We also have some index values here, and then we have this montage selection for a custom transition selection that we can use. Now, essentially, the way that this works is that if you wanted to use a custom follow-up montage, so you can set any one of the animations that you might have, if you have whenever this particular animation triggers, so this wall run here, right? Whenever we do this, if I wanted to have it do a second animation follow-up, then I can select one from this list, and that's exactly what it would do. However, we can also call to a transition selection table and use these indexes to select which one we want to utilize. So from here, let's go ahead and take a look at the selection table for transition actions. So in the content folder, we're going to go from DPTS assets to selection tables, and then we're going to look at the miscellaneous or MISC folder, and then open up the transition selection table. Now we'll go ahead and add a row, and then we're going to add a kind of new sub row here with an index. Now if we open up this index though, unlike with a lot of the other action types, you're going to see that we just have a value match index, and then we have a list that we can add of actions. And if we add one here, we can see that these look a lot more familiar. So the way that this works is that inside of the animation here, we can select a primary index and a sub index. So the primary index is like the row type selector. So if I go back to our character here where we've set up a few different animation selections, if I take a look at, the vault mantle or drop or whatever, we have this row use index, right? And this is going to allow us to select if we have more than one row, right? We can select one of those rows from that. So just like with those, we can use this primary index as that selector. But because transitions can be used in a wide variety of ways, I wanted to give you guys more ways to separate things out. Each row is also going to have a sub row, and this is where this part comes in. Now, as far as the transition value match index, we'll come back to that in a minute, but I just want to point out that we have the main row here, which this one would be 0, and this row, which is the sub row, which is going to be also 0. But if we added more rows, then we can use the sub row to select from this. So, let's say you had a bunch of transition animations that you had when you had a gun out, or when you don't have a gun out and you have a sword out, and you wanted to separate gun from sword by a row. But then, weapon type maybe with this sword you do this, or this sword you do this, right? This allows you to set it up however you want, basically. You don't need to use a bunch of rows and a bunch of sub rows, but you have the option there, absolutely, should you want to. And that's mainly the point that I wanted to make. Now, underneath the action selection values, if we open up the index, you'll see, like I said, it looks a lot more familiar, right? We have the action name, we have the compare values, a modification, and then the montage selection. So all of these work like I've demonstrated before, where the montage selection has a randomizer built into it. The compare values are going to match to a value listing in an array. Then the action modification allows you to modify how the action itself in this listing is going to be affected, or selected, However, if I open this up here, you're going to notice that it only has a state match restriction and a custom bool modification option. So this is that custom bool that I had shown you guys in the modifications video. And the state match restriction here is the one piece that I added to be able to make it so that way it would work really smoothly with climb transitions, jumps, and climb starts, or state types, I guess, realistically. So if you're not using it for that, and you're using it for like landing animations or follow-up animations of some other kind, you don't need to even worry about using this. This is only going to be used when you're going to be using it for like climb jumps, transitions, or starts. The last part to go over is going to be this match index here. Now, just like with everything else that I've shown, it's all just a simple looking at the index, right? And remembering, okay, this one's this one's this. So if we look at the transition value match index here, we can actually assign what this is going to use, because what this is going to do is pull a value from a listing and use that. So unlike with the other animations here where we're feeding in the array, this one's actually going to get it from another source. And that's actually here in the interfaces of our character. And we're going to open up under set data. You're going to open up where it says the set transition use values, and just double click to open that up. Now, once you open it up, you're going to see we have a compare value array here, and we have an index. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some room in the middle here. Pull off of the compare value, type in select, and then off of for the index here, we'll plug in the index just like that. So this way, we now have multiple different indexes for compare values we can use. And if we just pull off and do a make array, there we go. So now we can set this option 1, if we were doing landing animations, just as an example, if we get our character movement, pull off and get the velocity, just do the get velocity there, and then do the split struct pin, we can actually use the Z here to be able to select, when our Z, negative 1200 versus negative 600 versus negative 400, we can set those same range values inside of the selector. So we can go to the compare values here and then boom, minimum or maximum. And then as far as the use of the index, right, this one inside of the character blueprint, we've set this as option 0. So all that means is that we just need to make sure that this one is set to 0 as well. But if we had, for example, this one on option 1, then all we would need to do is just go to the selector here and change the 0 to 1. That's it. This allows you to be able to set your custom values inside of the montage and allows you to be able to separate the animation selection by 2 different types of rows. So you got your main row here and then your sub row right here. And you can also call the transition selection from your blueprint as well. If we pull off the dynamic parkour trace system, to drag it into our graph here and pull off of it and type in anim selection transition, you'll see this transition here. And you'll see that we have the main row, sub row, and then we also have a compare value we can use if we would like as well. And you can hook this up to be able to, like I said, call it in a variety of ways. There is realistically no limit to how you can utilize it. So I'd really love to see some different ways you guys might be able to find uses for the transition system. But like I said in the beginning, we're going to be using this for climb start. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at how we would utilize that. Now, just to show you as a quick example, right? When we climb up to this object, the actor ends in that full planted state. But what if we wanted to use something like, if I go to my climbing folder here, I got the transition use, this climb jump here. What if we wanted to use this to start and then attach with this animation, right? How would we go about doing that? Well, this is where the transition system comes into play, because we could use this jump as our start for our climb start, and then we can use the attach inside of the transition selection. Because as I had shown you guys in that wall run montage here, right, we can use the reset parkour action to attempt the transition, set the index and the sub index here, and then we can use the state match options inside of the modifications to have it select which one we're going to use. Now this will make more sense as we actually get through it, but I'm just kind of doing a quick run through as to how this works. So we can use the jump as our start, and then we can use the attach, and this will be selected dynamically based off of what's found. Remember those tag systems that we had set up here. So we got, I think these are both ledge. Yeah, so we got climb and then ledge. So now what we can do is actually create a couple of montages and start setting this up. So we'll start with the climb jump here. And just to, keep that broken record playing, make sure your animations have root motion. So once that is confirmed, we can just right click and then create anim montage. Now, just as before, I'm going to make a montage folder just so I can keep everything nice and clean. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with the ledge attach here. So I'm going to make a montage off of that and put both of those into the folder here. Now, let's go ahead and we'll start with working on the jump montage here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to first add a few notify tracks, just like we do always. And then we're going to disable the enable auto blend out. Now, as we had talked about with the other video, climb starts are generally always going to be the height point. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that way it goes from like right about here to here and goes to the height point. So I'm going to right click, add notify state, motion warp with offset. And then let's see, we'll get where he actually jumps from, which I'd say would be right about there. And then we'll go from here to here for the window. Now under the root motion modifier, we're going to set the warp target name to height. Ignore z-axis and warp rotation, we're going to uncheck, and then we're just going to check this use state warp overrides, which is the overrides that I discussed in the other video, where we can assign overrides to the system inside of the system override settings here, under the state warp overrides. This way we can use offset values saved in here rather than having to apply them to every single animation. Now, one thing to keep in mind though is that we are using this to get to a point, but then another animation is going to take over. So what we actually are going to want to do though is go up to the primary offsets, make sure to set orientation use to the primary target normal, and then under the offsets, we'll set the forward offset to be an additional -30, and the up offset, we'll set it to be 40. So we're going to bring it up a little bit, and we're going to bring it back. So this way, he's going to start a little further away from the actual point. Now from here, we're going to right click, add notify, and then go to the reset parkour action. Then what we're going to do is just go to the transition options, select attempt transition. Now we're going to keep the use primary index and the sub index at 0, because I'm going to use 0 for my climb transitions. Now, there's something else we're going to want to do here as well, though, because as I discussed in one of the other videos, this is going to reset the search itself, but we can actually make it so the values don't reset quite yet. If we go into the details panel for the reset here, under advanced options, we have this option that says maintain search values. So what this will do, if we click this, it will save the height, target lengths, any found target like actors that have been tagged with like climbing types or state types of any kind, wall running, beams, all that. So anything that happens to be found by the search will no longer be reset, allowing us to continue to use them in the next animation. So we can just go ahead and click on save. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our climb start options here. So in the DPTS assets, selection tables, from climb, and open up the climb start. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the range on this. So under the compare values, I'm going to make this so this is a little higher up. So it has to be between 250 and 350 for this to be selected. But if it's lower than that, then I'm going to need a different animation. So I'm going to add a new index here. Under the index, I'm going to add the montage slot. And we're going to grab that accu jump, ACCUR jump, whatever. We're going to add that into here. And then for the compare values, because remember in the character, when we set up the climbing, I had just set it up to be using the height. So that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to set the compare value for the minimum of 75 to a maximum of 250, because that's what the minimum for this one I think I set to, is it not? Yeah, perfect. So this one will be anywhere between 75 and 250. It'll use this animation. Above 250, it'll use the other one. But here's what we can do that's pretty cool. If we go to the action modification here, under the state match restrictions, we're going to set a few different targets here. So we're going to go, I'll actually just minimize 0 here. So we're going to add a couple targets here. And we'll set this one to ledge climb full contact. We'll set this one to ledge climb hang. We can also set point climb full contact. We can basically almost add all of the different types. The only thing that you might want to do different is going to be for free climbing, just as an FYI. We can also go ahead and just set it up for balance beam hang as well if we want. So this way we can just add all of these different climb types, and it'll basically just, if it's any of these, it'll go ahead and select this animation to get us to the point. So now if I go ahead and just walk over to this, you can see he does the jump, but you can see there's a problem. He kind of just flies through the surface. And I'm showing you this because you want to make sure that you have the transition action set up. Otherwise that will happen. But if there's something for it to select, that will not. So let's go ahead and give it something to select. So we're going to go and now open up the ledge attach montage here. And now for this one, we're going to add a few notify tracks just like before, and then enable auto blend out on check. And then we're going to right click, add notify state, and then the motion warp with offset. Now I like to make sure these are back in the close to the beginning as possible. And then we're going to look at when he gets to that attach point. Now, as I had said in the other climb start video, we want to look at where the hands really kind of stop. And I'd say right about here would be a good spot. Now what we can do is just go into the primary offsets, make sure the orientation is set to the primary target, and then the offsets we can leave blank and we'll just use state warp overrides. But the root motion modifier here, we're going to want to make sure to set the name to height and uncheck ignore z-axis and warp rotation. And then scrub forward a little bit, look at where it gets to his plant, and then we're just going to right click, add notify, and then reset parkour action. This time just setting a blend time. And then we're going to go into the state options and make sure that use or activate state is checked. So just to do a quick run through, right? So we're starting with the jump here. We're going and saying, okay, we want to jump and then go to the found target area. And then we want you to select this animation if the ledge type full contact is found. So that's what we're going to assign next. So if we go into the transition selection options here, and then we have this value here that we can use for index 0. So for the montage, I'm just going to add the attach. and this is inside of the transition selection table. So I'm going to add that under the index 0. So again, I'm just using the row that we created when I was showing you guys the selection tables here, and I do have the value set as 1, so I'm going to set that back to 0. Now for the compare value here, I'm just going to leave it blank. I'm going to have it feeding in because you can't not have a value in here, but we want to make sure that we give it something. So I'm just going to give it a value, but I'm going to keep it at 0. Because the thing that I'm going to use to switch the animation type is actually going to be the state match restriction. Because in the climb start selection, we gave it multiple types that we can choose from to select this animation. However, from here, we want to make sure that it's specific for the actual attaches, right? So for the target here, I'm going to set this one to maybe ledge climb full contact. And then I'll set this one to maybe point climb full contact. So that way this one, because you can see if we go ahead and open this up, he ends in that full contact state. So I wouldn't want to use that for a hang. I mean, I guess I could also use that for free climbing if I wanted to, because then it would blend out. But realistically, I find that if you have the specific animation, it's better off to use it. Because now, if we just click on save here, minimize, hit play, and we do the same. Oh, I could be a little closer. I was too far away. But if we do the same thing, you can see he jumps, and then he attaches. Now, if we go back to our character here, though, looks like I got an error. So if we go into set transition use values, we got to make sure that we have a make array inside of there. Otherwise, it will cause a bit of a problem. So there we go. So we'll compile and save that. And if I go back to my attach here, I'm actually going to adjust the plant a little bit because I want the hands to be a bit more perfect. So I'm going to put it right about there and see how that works. So now if I go up to the object, you can see we're jumping forward and he plants and attaches. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out too is see when he does the jump, there's a bit of a jitter there. We can actually really easily fix that. If we go to our animation blueprint, which you can actually navigate to very quickly if you have an animation open by clicking on this 3 little like yellow square icon there. And then if we go into our anim graph, we're going to set the blend time for false to 0. Because now if we compile and then play, you can see that now that issue does not happen. Now we could offset some of these things a little bit more. We could pull the jump back a little bit. We could do some more kind of adjustments on things. But, you know, this is where kind of playing around with some of those values really kind of comes into play. So let's see. We'll go in and maybe under the primary offsets, we'll go forward by an additional -80. Actually, we'll make it -120. We'll make it so that way it goes back quite a ways here. All right. So you see that time it did kind of do exactly what I would want it to do. Now, we could also put a, something here in the beginning here to control his location as well. But, that's really, again, it's all about the fine tuning and how you want to set things up. Now, let's quickly, just to show you guys, if I go ahead and grab, I also have this hang attach here. So I'm going to grab this, right click, and create anim montage, put it in my montages folder. So I'm now going to show you, now that we've set up our transitions and kind of know how to use it for at least a little bit, I'm going to show you how quickly it is to be able to now add additional types. So if I go into the hanging attach montage here, notifies, we're going to add a few notify tracks, uncheck the enable auto blend out. Now for the hang one here, because you can see here, he gets to a point here, but then he kind of rises up. So I like to do corrections here. So I'm going to do a right click, notify state, and I'm going to look at where he kind of first interacts with the object, put that as 1 point, and then I'm going to right click at notify state, motion warp with offset, and then we're going to look at where he kind of interacts with another. So this is where he's kind of going more back, I suppose, and this one he's just going straight up. So we'll go from here to here, and then we'll do another one, notify state, motion warp with offset, and then we'll go up to where he actually stops. So this is something that I noticed with this particular animation, but if you do notice your animation's having a similar problem, this will solve it very easily. So what we'll do is we're going to go to the motion warp offset here. We're going to make sure use state overrides is checked on all of these because we want it to use the state warp overrides, but we're going to give a bit of an adjustment for each of these overrides. So for this one here, we want to make it so that way he's going to be up a little bit more. So we're going to bring it up by maybe about 50 units. And we're going to make it so that way he's back a little bit by an additional maybe 40 units. Make sure that rotation is set to the primary target. And then we want to do this for all of these here. So we're actually going to set all of these to the primary target. And then we'll quickly also just set the height as the end point. Uncheck ignore z-axes. We'll just kind of set these up so that way we can start modifying things. We want to make sure warp rotation is checked. Accidentally unchecked that. There we go. Okay, so now this one will be height. That one's height. This one needs to be height. Okay, perfect. All right, so now that we have our points defined, what we're going to do is right click, add notify state, reset parkour action, under state control options, activate state. And then we'll set blend time to 0.2. Now, we're probably going to have to mess with these a little bit, but let's go ahead in our transition selection table. We'll just go under the index 0 here. We'll add another element, and then we'll add our hang attach animation that we just set up there. Again, just give it a compare value, but we'll leave it blank. And under the action modification, state types, because this is a hang animation, we're just going to go ahead and set the primary type to ledge climb hang. Now, we could also use this if we wanted to. If you, like me, using the same animations for ledge climb hang as well as balance beam hang, then we could also set it for balance beam hang as well. Then we'll go ahead and save. And now if we minimize, hit play, and go up to this object here, we'll jump towards it, and you can see that he does the animation, but you can see that there's definitely some issues there. So let's go ahead and take a look at what those issues are. We'll slow things down. So the first thing is, let's see, he needs to go up a little bit more, and it looks like that's really it. So it looks like it's mainly the second one. It may have actually nailed some of those offsets pretty well. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. So this one needs to be raised a little bit. So this one, the primary offsets, I can actually take, if I hold shift and right click on these offsets, I can go into the next one here, shift left click, and you can see it pasted them. Now let's take a look at how this looks with the same offsets. This way we know how we need to adjust. So I'm just kind of showing you guys how to be able to look at how things need to be adjusted. And again, this one definitely, we probably want to put a location in the beginning there. All right, so that might be a little much. So we'll take the up offset, maybe set it to 0. Maybe, we'll set it to like 20. Set it to something small. So it doesn't look like the forward offset needs to be adjusted by too much. And again, this is just kind of where we play around with stuff. You know, we kind of look at, all right, this is going here. This is going here. This is going here, you know? All right, so perfect. So now it is just the forward offset that's causing a problem. So we'll set maybe that to 0. Because realistically, that last one's more going up. So let's see. All right, so we hit the spacebar and let's see how we look. Goes up and there we go. All right, it's a little bit better. You know, it could be a bit better, but it's at least a good start. All right, cool. So now we have set up the ability to do climb hangs as well as ledges using the same animations. You were doing the jump and then attach, and then I can go over to this one and do the jump and attach, and you can see it's using a completely different animation set. Now, another cool thing that we can do with the transition system is we can actually use this to set up sort of like a tic-tac jump as well, which I think is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this particular object, I'm going to move it up so it's a little bit higher, and then I'm going to duplicate it so that way I have a version of it. I'm going to take the tags off of this though, because I don't want this one to be a climb actor. Now, I'll just rotate it so that way it's got a bit of a 90-degree angle. Because again, we're kind of giving ourselves a bit of a sidewall here, something we might be able to use to climb up as an assist. So we'll make it a nice big kind of sidewall like this. And then we'll move our character so that way he's actually on this side of it. Perfect. Okay. So now, if I go back into my climbing folder here, go into the transition use options, we're going to take these two tic-tac jump options. So just like with the other one here, this accurate jump, right? This is what we use to start our climb start, but then we can also use these as well, because you can see these also go into a falling state. So we'll take both of these, right click, and create anim montage, take both of those, put those into the montages folder, and we'll do some quick setup on these. So just like with the other ones, we're going to add some notifies, and then we'll right click, add notifies state, and then motion warp with offset. And we're going to look at where he gets onto the sidewall, create the window timing just like that. Now remember, with the tic tacs, we do need to set an offset. So this is the left side. So we want to go to our offsets, right offset, and we want to set a positive value so we can bring him to the right side. So if we're jumping to the left, we want to move him to the right away from the wall. Otherwise, he will intersect with it. So we're going to take right and put 80. Now we're going to go right click, notify state, motion warp with offset, and we're going to look at where he kind of jumps off the wall, which I'd say would be right about here. And then we can use from here to, let's say, right about here to get to our height point. So under the root motion modifier, we'll go with height, ignore z-axis, uncheck, we'll keep warp rotation checked, and the warp rotation is going to be the primary target normal. Now disable the auto blend out there, right click, add notify, and reset parkour action. Now, just like what we did before, we're going to go under the transition options, make sure attempt transition is checked, and because in our index for the transition here, we're using row primary 0 and as well as sub 0, right? So we don't need to actually change those numbers. And then we'll go under the advanced options and make sure maintain search values is checked. Now, I forgot to put the root motion info on the sidewall here. So this one's the left. So we're going to go side wall underscore L. And then ignore z-axis uncheck. And then on the secondary offset here, we're going to use the state warp overrides. And then for the offsets, we'll go forward -50, and then we'll go up 40. So just like with what we're doing with the jump, we're pulling it back and up a little bit, but we still wanted to try and get to wherever its target destination is going to be. So we save this, now we're good. So we can do the same thing for the right side here, and I'll do this a little bit faster on this one. So we'll add the notify track, disable the auto blend out, right click, notify state, motion warp with offset, look at where it gets onto the wall, define that, set the warp target name to side wall underscore, and this time is going to be R. And then the right offset, I'm going to set to -80 because we want to move him away from the wall. Orientation is going to stay as actor. Ignore z-axis is going to be unchecked. And then we're going to right click, add notify state again, and motion warp with offset. And we're going to look at where he jumps off the wall, which would be right about here, I'd say. And we're going to look at a good blend out point, which I'd say would be right about there. And for the forward offset again, we're going to set for -40 and then 50. Orientation is going to be primary target normal. Ignore z-axis uncheck, warp rotation check, and target's going to be height. Now we just make sure to check to use state warp overrides, right click, add notify, and reset parkour action. Bam. All right, so we'll set the blend time on this one. Actually, we don't need to set the blend time on that. That's fine. The transition options, though, here, we want to go in attempt transition, keeping the indexes at 0. And then under the advanced options, maintain search values. Perfect. All right, so now we should be good to go. So now if I go into the climb start here, we'll go ahead and we'll add 2 more elements in here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the action modification listing here, so this way we can use the same values for the state match from the other one, from the jump that we set up. So this way we don't have to do this a second time with all these different types. So I'm going to right click on the state match restriction. Actually, we can make this easier. We'll just shift right click on the action modification, then shift left click on the new indexes for the action modification. This way we can just copy them in, because now you can see we have all the same targets that we had set up. Now, obviously, if you wanted to make it so not all of them would be able to use the tic-tac start, it's entirely up to you, but I'm just going to set them up so that way they're all usable. Now, for this one, I'll set to left, and this one for the action modification, I'll set to right, because we have the sidewall lefts and rights here, as well as a sprint. And then in the montage section here, we'll just go ahead and put those in. So we'll go with tic-tac. So I'll actually, because I have them here in my content browser, what I'll do is we can actually just do a tic-tac right. So on the one that's the right side, which is this one, you can take it and put it in there. And then for the left side one, put the left side into there. So boom. So, all right, so now we have our jump actions in place. So if I hit play, and we're actually going to move this down because I didn't notice it was not touching the ground. And we'll go ahead and we'll just do this. Oh, need to be back a little bit. Let's see. We did not give it compare values. That's right. Okay. So compare values here. We're going to go ahead and make sure to add these in because we did not give it any values to check against. Now, what we're going to do, though, is we're going to move this wall down a little bit because I believe that's outside of my max height just by a smidge because I'm only going up 350 units. And then for the min and max here, we'll just set between, we'll say a minimum of 150. So it has to be up a little bit higher, and a maximum we'll just set 350. And now if we hit play, we can now do the tic-tac action. Now, I will say that in this instance, you can see that the triggering the tic-tac can be a little bit challenging sometimes because of the fact you do have to be a little bit closer to the wall. So if we do something like this, where, you know, you can maybe run up at it like this, I guess that does make things look a little bit better. Because then if you walk up to it just from a little bit farther away, he's just going to do the jump instead. And realistically, if we take the sidewall here and we put it on the other side, now let's move it so it's a little closer. We'll get the same results where we can run up to it and it'll do the tic-tac jump up and then attach. So this is just one example. And realistically, once you set up the transition action selections with a bunch of different attachment options, these can actually be used in a variety of different ways with different selections for jumps and transitions as well. So it makes it pretty cool where you can actually select different endings for different action types and blend them together really smoothly. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is just how to be able to maybe modify additional actions to be able to use this setup and maybe a bit further. So if we go into my transition use options here, and you know what, I'm actually going to go back to the climbing one. I'm going to take this one. So we can see that this actor, he goes to the wall, jumps up, but then if we were to, you know, for example, cut the animation maybe right about here, we could use almost any animation. But because he ends here, that's kind of a problem. He doesn't really stop where he should, right? Well, what if we were to duplicate this animation, open it up? Now, if we track where that point is, so we'll say that's right about frame 18. So if we scrunch in a little bit on our notifies, and then we look at under the curves, we can right click and you'll see we can remove frame sections. So what we want to do is we're actually going to remove from 19 on. So you can see we got 17 there. There we got 18. And there we go. We got 20. So we actually want to go back a little bit. All right. So let's see. 19. All right. So you can see remove 19 from 30. Remove from frame 19 to frame 32. So if we click on this, now we have this to where it actually doesn't end in any point. And this is where it actually gets kind of cool. So if I were to actually just really quickly, I'm not going to use the initial point. I'm just going to use a very simple setup for this just to demonstrate. But if I create the montage, open it up, and in the notify track here, I'm just going to go right click, notify state, motion warp with offset. And if I have him go to the target area right around here, root motion modifier, we'll set it to height, uncheck ignore Z axes. Primary offsets will make sure that the orientation is the target normal. Then we'll use state warp overrides, and we'll set the offsets to be up by maybe additional 20 and forward by an additional -20. And then we'll right click, add notify, and this time we'll add another track here. So that way we can do the reset action here. And then under transition options, we're going to attempt the transition. And then under advanced options, we're going to maintain search values. Bam. Okay, so now with this set up this way, if we uncheck the enable auto blend out here, save, go back to our climb start. And what we can do is we'll actually go ahead and we'll take this one out completely and we'll replace it with the one that we just made. But we'll go ahead and take the state match restrictions and we'll put it in here. So this way we can actually use this animation now under varied other conditions. Now we have all the additional targets here that we can use. So now if I move this up, so remember this animation is going to be chosen when it's up higher, closer to about 350. So if I put this ledge item up and we hit space, because it's going to auto choose the jump here. So we'll set the value on the wall run jump to maybe 150. So we'll move it down so that way it can't actually select the animation. And we'll move this up maybe just a smidge more, just to make sure that it's going to be outside of its value. And you can see that it did the climb up animation to where it just did that wall, but then it went into a hang. So this allowed me to be able to climb up this wall and then hang off of this. So just by clipping that animation, I was able to do a lot there. Now, if I set the blend time here to 0.2, sometimes this does fix things on the animations. So we can see we get a little bit better movement there. Now, something we might want to change would maybe be like having him go backwards a little bit, or, you know, maybe just adjusting some basic offsets. But if we take a look here, you can see it's realistically just because of the fact that he's maybe starting at a different position than the hang start's going to. So all we would really need to do is maybe just do, again, some adjustments inside of the actual offsets. That's another way that we can use even animations that end in a specific state, clip them up, and then make them more versatile. So there's a lot of ways we can use the transition system to make a ton of different climb starts. And this is where, as I've been saying, you can really make it so that way the system will be unique, because there's no guarantee that somebody's going to use the exact same combination of comboed animations that you're going to be using, even if you're using the same pack. So that's really it for kind of the how to be able to use the climb setups or the climb starts with the transition system, guys. Now, realistically from here, you can kind of just go nuts, you know, setting different state types, doing different animation clipping, kind of setting things up in a variety of different ways. So, and in the next video, we're going to be taking a look at climb transitions and climb jump actions. So I hope you guys are excited. We're going to be taking a look at how to be able to do, you know, jumps and drops and different sorts of transitions for platformer games and a whole bunch of different stuff. So I hope to see you guys in that one. But until then, stay tuned. And as always, stay animated.